Pivot tables are a really useful tool to help you analyze data. When you have a lot of data, it can be very difficult to pick out the salient points. We've got some very simple data on this spreadsheet that's just got category, country, and sales. And we might want to analyze that. We might want to work out what the total sales are for England, for example. A pivot table can help us do that kind of calculation and record those results and automatically update them. A pivot table is created on a table of data, and that means the data has to be continuous. So you can't have any gaps in your data. Now that doesn't mean that, for example, this figure here for England can't have nothing in it. It means you can't have complete blank lines. Because we're working with a table, it means that you don't have to select the whole table first. All you need to do is make sure that your selection is on at least one cell of the table that you want to work with. So we just need to make sure we've got at least one cell selected. And then we use the Insert tab. And from the Insert tab, on the Tables section, we use the Pivot Table icon. Now you'll notice a little drop down there, and that just allows you to change between Pivot Table and Pivot Chart. It's Pivot Table we're using, but really everything we talk about is applicable to a chart as well. It's just a difference in the way in which the data is displayed, either as numbers or as a graphical representation. So we're going to work with a pivot table. We simply click the icon and the Create Pivot Table dialog box opens with the cell range already included. And that's because we were working with a table and we clicked on that table. We didn't need to tell it. It's picked up all the correct cell range for us. If that wasn't correct, then we could simply use the collapse dialog box icon and then select the data in the usual way and then expand the dialog box back up. Then all we've got to decide is where do we want to put this pivot table? Do we want to put in a new worksheet or in the existing worksheet? This is just a preference for you. There's no rights and wrongs. I'm going to put in a new worksheet. It'll just give me a little bit more space to show you what I need to show you. So I click on OK. And Excel has created a brand new worksheet for us called Sheet 2 in this instance. It's created a pivot table here. That's this area around here. But we don't actually do anything here. Everything we need to do is either using this task pane at the right hand side that has opened up, or the Options and Design tabs that are now there because we've created our pivot table. They weren't there earlier. If I click off the pivot table, you'll see those extra tabs disappear. Clicking back on the pivot table opens up those new tabs. So basically a pivot table is a table created from the data that we've already got. These fields that are available, year, category, country, and sales, are actually the column titles that we had in our data. If I just switch back and show you, there's the data, year, category, country, and sales, and sheet 2 with the pivot table on it, there's those field names. What we have to do is decide which of these field names go into which area of the pivot table. Now again, there are no rights and wrongs here. It just depends on what data you've got. So what I want to do is I'm going to put the country in, and I want to actually, see I always put that in this row area at the bottom. When I click on country here, it puts it into the row labels at the bottom. I don't actually want it as a row. What I want to do is put it as a report filter. So all I can do to move these around is just simply click and drag from one box to the next, and that label changes now. So I've got country as my report filter. And what that means will become apparent as we build up. I want to use category, and the category has again gone into the row labels look, and that's fine. It's putting it down this left hand side as labels for my data. That's absolutely fine. And I want to do something with sales. So I'm going to click on sales. Excel has made a guess that sales is numerical, and therefore I want to do some kind of calculation. And it's guessed that I want to use it as values and add them up, sum of sales. And that's what it's doing. It's adding up all the sales for the computer supplies and putting a total there. All the sales for envelopes and bags and putting a total there. If I don't want a sum and I want to change that, I can use the drop down menu on the field and choose value field settings, and there I can choose the type of calculation I might want to find the average sales, for example, and then click on OK. I've now got the average sales. That's fine. I'm not using all the fields. I can add them in and take them away as many times as I want. I'm going to come back to filtering and sorting in a later video, but just very briefly to show you that we can filter on these now. So for example, if I just want to look at computer supplies, I can click this drop down, remove the tick from select all, put the tick in computer supplies and OK, and the table shrinks down to just show me the sales for that category. Bring them back again and select all and OK, and they're all back. Again, with this page area at the top, the country, it was called here the report filter. The report filter is by country. I can use the drop down arrow to filter. I might just want to find all the sales in England. So I'll click on England, click on OK, and they are the sales just now for England. We'll put that back to all. You might change the data. The pivot table will not automatically update. You have to tell it to update. So let's see what I mean by this. We've got computer supplies 492. Remember that figure. If I go back to the original data that was on sheet 1 and change one of the figures for computer supplies, here's one for Ireland. Let's change that from 0.35. Let's change it to 1.35. When I go back to the pivot table that's now on sheet 2, that table has not been updated. I've still got a figure there of 492. You need to manually refresh that pivot table. And we do that using the Options tab and then refresh. And that updates that figure. That can be a little bit of bind. You can make it happen manually every time you open the document. Again, in the Options tab, selecting the pivot table and coming down to Options here. I'm not going to go into what all of this does, but if I just select the Data tab, then we can tell it to refresh the data when opening the file. The other way we can refresh data is simply by right-clicking, and then we can do refresh there as well. Now, in order to modify this table, we can add these fields in and out just by clicking and dragging and moving them around in this area or switching them on and off. For example, we could put the year in, and let's put the year as the report filter and bring the country down as a category in the row labels. And you can see how that's changing. I've now got the year at the top and I can filter for the year 2000 perhaps. And see the sales for computer supplies for Wales and the sales for envelopes and bags in Ireland and Wales. And you can see how that's working just by changing these positions of the fields in this report filter, column labels, values and row labels. We can change the total appearance of the pivot table. Okay, on the Design tab, we can change the overall appearance of the pivot table. Again, we can use these scrolling arrows to move the different pivot table styles up and down. And just by hovering over them, we are previewing them. Or we can expand it using the More button to see them all at the same time. I'm going to choose this orange one, simply click there. And then we can use these tick boxes here to choose which parts of this overall style we want to use. For example, we can have banded rows, banded columns, take off the headers, take off the rows. So you can add those features in or out. Finally, to delete a pivot table, we need the Options tab. Then we need to select in the Actions section, we need to select the entire table and then simply press the delete key on your keyboard. That's the way we get rid of it. So that's pivot tables. It's a way of grouping together and analyzing your data. Make sure you've got a cell selected. Do Insert Pivot Table, picks up your cell range, choose where you want it to go, click OK, and then decide which categories you want to use. Once you've done that, it doesn't automatically update. You need to refresh it, and we refresh it on the Options tab. And if you want to change the overall appearance, it's on the Design tab.